George can relate to this. I was putting together the show, building the title and the link in StreamYard, and it hit me because I usually try to think of, okay, what's the title going to be this week? Are we going to talk about recruiting update, quarterbacks, whatever it's going to be? Oh yeah, it's game week. It's game week. It's different this week. Oh yeah, it clicked because I always put in, boom, the opponent. It's Georgia Tech week. There we go. There's our title. And here we go. It is officially, folks, the 2024 Florida State football season. Let it sink in, embrace it, love it. And we appreciate you being here at the Voice of College Football. We got George here to break down the Noles, and we've got an opponent to look at again for the final time, Georgia Tech. It's an ACC game, so it matters double in trying to obviously get back to Charlotte and an ACC championship game. We appreciate you being here. Comments, questions there. Welcome in the chat. We will get to them. We appreciate your super chat contributions as well. Again, George is here from the Renegade Report. George, what's going on?
Man, we're talking about off stage, man. It's just busy. Game week is here, so we've had a ton of stuff going on with live shows on the channel and also trying to do some shorter stuff, videos and reels, and just having fun, excited. We're lucky we get a week early. We get our game a week early, and we're the real premier matchup. We talked about earlier, SMU has a game, but nothing like Florida State, Georgia Tech, an in-conference matchup. Just fired up, ready for it to get here, man. I think I'm going hoarse. I don't think I've ever went hoarse from talking. I haven't hollered or anything, but yeah, it's been a lot of podcasts and having a lot of fun and ready to break it down. Andy Staples did a podcast, I think, yesterday, and he called Florida State the best defensive line in the nation. And the closer we get, the more hyped up we get. I'm like pretty much drunk on Kool-Aid right now. So you may have to reel me back in, but I'm pretty fired up for Saturday night.
Well, we're going to try to reel you back just to save your voice. We want to make sure that voice is good to go for Saturday and everything you got to do in between. Scores. We'll take some score predictions, folks. Leave those in the chat. We'll read them off. We will take your score predictions. Florida State 11.5 according to Vegas. The last I checked, against the Yellow Jackets of Georgia Tech. They were 7-6 last year. They won a bowl game, and we've said it a few times. This will be the last time I'm going to say it just because it's fun, and it'll be in the distant past, 2023. But Mario Cristobal kneels down. Georgia Tech doesn't go to a bowl game, and they're 5-7. We're not talking about them. There seems to be, Georgia. I had a Georgia Tech guy on a couple of weeks ago, and we talked about all the good things going on with the program. Brent Key inherited pretty much a disaster. He's done a decent job. They had their first winning season in a while. There's all these good vibes around the program, but still, if Mario Cristobal just makes the obvious call, 5-7. As you well know, unfortunately, I'll remind you from just a few years ago, 5-7, that plays, especially for a program like Georgia Tech. Florida State, 5-7, 7-6, it's different, but it's like, well, we're Florida State. You don't go 7-6 there either. But for Georgia Tech, there's a good feeling coming off a bowl win against a decent program like UCF and going 7-6 versus going 5-7. Then you're kind of like, well, we're really not that good. So it's that close to there being a negative narrative for Georgia Tech coming into this game.
Yeah, it's different. They're playing with house money. When you've recruited 6 blue chips over the past 4 years and things like that, they're definitely playing over their skis. The thing that has happened, I guess, since last Wednesday, we got a Georgia Tech depth chart. We talked about it a little bit earlier on the morning show over on the main channel. Make sure you guys go check that out. Mark's out here every day in the morning talking about everything college football. Yeah, you see where the hype comes from about the offense and about the matchup. We've talked a lot in a bunch of different shows how this could be a tight game in the first half. We could definitely see Georgia Tech ain't going to make it easy. Brent Key's a hell of a coach. They've had all offseason to get ready. They're going to have some stuff schemed up. But the real question of what's going to happen in this game is going to happen into the third quarter and into the fourth quarter. They just don't have the depth yet. Similar to where Florida State was in 21 or 22. You see some bright spots, and you can pull off some wins against some highly ranked programs. You saw Florida State back then in 21 beat a UNC team they had no business beating, or was that 2020? Either way, you come out as in the opener in 2021 against Notre Dame, who was a top 10 team, and you take them to overtime. You end up going 0-4 and losing to Jacksonville State. So there is a bit of wiggle room there. You can play over your head, or you can play down to your competition. But just Florida State isn't the team that I feel like is going to go out there and do that. We've seen Mike Norvell be the guy, like Brent Key right now, of getting done more with less, and now he has the talent. So I could be wrong, but that's where our kind of confidence comes in. I haven't put a score prediction out there, but as you mentioned, 11.5 is the Vegas line at the moment, and I think that's pretty close to where my prediction would probably be. But yeah, there's a ton of matchups we can talk about. I don't think I've spent as much time on the defensive side on the show as we have the offense. So if you have any questions about the defense or want to talk about D-line versus offensive line matchup, we could definitely do that.
Absolutely. And again, folks, leave us your scores in the chat. We'll read them off. I'm going to go to the channel and see what comments come up this week that were left. I see quite a few there, and we will go through those as well. Yeah. So where do you think the Florida State defense, I know that you made a comment about the Andy Staples podcast and him naming Florida State as the best defensive line in college football to start the season, going from defensive line through the linebackers into the secondary versus the standard that was set last year. The two obvious names that come to mind, Braden Fisk, Jared Verse, of course, up front, and some losses elsewhere. Take us through the defense in regards to how good do you think this unit's going to be?
Yeah, we'll start with that front four and look. Jared Verse, that's the main name, because Jared Verse came through. He made his hay in 2022. He was a no-doubt lock first-round pick. Braden Fisk, this time last year, as excited as we were about him, proven squat. He hadn't been at Florida State very long. He was a little dinged up at the beginning and even towards the middle of the year. So we went out there and we kicked LSU's butt, but it was a little bit less about Braden Fisk, more about Jared Verse, Pat Payton, Josh Farmer, those guys. Yeah, by the end of the year, Braden Fisk was a dump truck. He could have been a first-round pick. If he'd have done what he did at the end of the year, at the beginning of the year last year, he would have been a first-round pick, hands down first-round pick. So I would say give time for Darrell Jackson, a guy who was on this roster all last year and at different points of the year, several different separate points of the year, they were talking about him maybe being the best interior guy on the entire team, even though he couldn't play. He's on Bruce Feldman's, top freaks list, top 20 freaks in the country. He's 6'6", 330 pounds. I just mentioned Josh Farmer. He's a guy who, was kind of the second defensive tackle the past couple of years. First next to Fabian Lovett, kind of surpassed him. Then next to Braden Fisk last year at the end of the year. He's that guy. He's ready to take that next step. He's another top 3 round pick for sure. Currently, if I had to draft him today, I'd say he's probably 3rd round, but he can work himself up into the 2nd or 1st round. I mentioned Patrick Payton. He's another demon off the edge who's just been getting better and better and better every year. And now in his 4th year at Florida State, he's ready to just be a beast. So those top 4 positions, they're pretty loaded down. The 3 are pretty, there's not even a second thought of those are great Florida State defensive linemen. We know what they bring. Darrell Jackson hasn't played a ton of snaps for us, but we've seen the tape at Miami, and there's he's been practicing for 2 years. Marvin Jones Jr. is the kind of question of we're not really sure how high that ceiling can go. We know he's locked down a starting spot. We've seen the athleticism on tape in Georgia, but we haven't seen him in the system. We haven't seen that jump yet. The question is, how high is it? Is it Jermaine Johnson, 1st round draft pick? The second he takes a snap for Florida State, just immediately your best player? Or is it somewhere a little bit lesser? Is he something like Jared Verse in the 1st year? Or is he a little bit better than that, somewhere in between? We're going to find out. But we do know he's the most athletic defensive end we've had on campus in a long, long time. And his ceiling is higher than any of those people I've mentioned if he can put it all together.
Good stuff. All right. I see one score here that came in this week. Justin Jenkins, 1249. FSU wins it 41-16. George is here.
Hold on, what was that?
What do you want to see?
What was the score you said? Oh,
there was no score from George.
Oh, FSU 41-16. Okay.
41-16. Yeah.
Making sure that wasn't Georgia Tech. Now we have a good rant.
Dustin Harris, Florida State by 2 touchdowns. No name. I think DJ's a winner. It ain't the prettiest, but he competes and he's won the ACC before. I know we're comparing some stats here. I found an interesting comparison. DJ 2022 at about 2,500 yards passing, 500 rushing. Tim Tebow in 2008, 2,700 passing, 673 rushing.
Wow. There's some context for you. Yeah,
Really?
and that's what I try to tell people. I mean, he's already done it. Add those up, that's 3,000 yards. He don't have the touchdowns there. But Mike Norvell gets 3,000 yards and 30 touchdowns out of DJ, whether it's combined or passing. And this offense is going to be cooking with grease.
Matt Machado says 11-1 this year, and he says DJ's got a higher ceiling than Travis. Mike will pull the most out of DJ.
Higher ceiling.
Maybe
as a passer, maybe as a pocket passer. It's hard to ever say that about somebody like Jordan Travis because the sky's the limit with the skill set that guy has.
G. Brooks, 799. The defense will define how many games we win or lose. Right now, the defense needs to prove itself. If they rise above abysmal, that might add one more win to the year.
Yes, and he's talking about Georgia Tech. That's the thing that kind of surprised me, having not been too keen on their roster moves and exactly what they did. I know 30 guys, I think, transferred out. They brought a bunch of transfers in. They've got guys like Amari Harvey, a kid who transferred from Auburn, the Romello Height kid from out at USC. Zeke Biggers, the nose tackle. I'm not sure if he's a transfer or not, but I know he's a pretty plus player for them. But outside of that, you got a lot of the same names. You know, your left cornerback, 6 foot, 200 pounds. Your right cornerback is where's he at? That's Amari Harvey, 6 foot, 190 pounds. So, you know, it's going to be tough against some of those bigger bodies, against Morlock, against, and, you know, it's kind of a weakness of Florida State. It's not so much a weakness. They don't have players that are known. They don't have those jersey guys, something we've talked about ad nauseum. But we'll see how it works out. The defense, as the guy said, it was not very good last year, and they brought back a lot of the players. And then when you look at the reserves, as we kind of talked about earlier as well, a whole lot of true freshmen, redshirt freshmen, sophomores, and not blue chips and things of that nature. So we'll see. Offense, you can put things together. They've got a great run scheme. They've got a savvy quarterback. Defense, you really kind of have to have the Jimmies and the Joes. On top of everything, due to the personnel, I'm sure has a lot to do with it. They run a lot of zone. These Florida State wide receivers have been struggling against press man coverage against NFL DBs in camp. You know, James Coleman is not here today, but he did a thing on his show where he showed a clip from a popular anime, Dragon Ball Z, where this guy finally, you know, he finally gets all the weights off and he's just like fighting somebody extremely weak. He's like, oh my gosh, I made it. Look how strong I am. Here I am. That's how these FSU wide receivers are going to feel against the Georgia Tech DBs. So that's a lot different. We'll see what happens. You have to have the confidence to make the catches, but yeah, we'll see what that defense looks like. But talking to James, maybe we're wrong. Maybe we're getting too confident, but sure sounds like fried chicken from everything we've heard, unfortunately. And that's coming from Georgia Tech people, you know, like that commenter.
I didn't want to be too negative with my Georgia Tech guy on the line, but you look at their last half of the season here, they've got to, outside of Florida, I don't know that they don't have the toughest November in the country. So their final 5 games are Notre Dame, Virginia Tech, Miami, NC State, and Georgia. It might be tough
when I was looking through all the ACC schedules and I seen theirs, I was like, woof. Yep, they got the Florida schedule of this one. Sorry to cut you off.
Yeah, their rough deal is that they play Georgia every year, so nobody
Hmm.
wants to do that, and they're the team obviously because they got that ACC SEC rivalry, just like Florida State does with Florida. So they're one of those big matchups, and Georgia has been the best program in the world the last 3 or 4 years, and they got to deal with them every year. And then, when the ACC with this contract with Notre Dame, when that comes up, then they get Notre Dame too and Georgia non-conference. So it's
Yeah, when you look at those different schedules we brought up, like Syracuse, Virginia Tech, a couple different ones, and they miss like three of the top four teams, like three or four different teams. And then you look at this one, it's tough. They open up with Florida State. Okay, they get Louisville, UNC, Notre Dame, Virginia Tech, Miami, NC State, and then Georgia. Yeah, they're playing like six of the top seven teams or six of the top eight, whatever it is. I'm surprised. No, they do. And Notre Dame, and they play Notre Dame. Yeah, the poor guys. We'll see. It's going to be tough, tough, tough for Georgia Tech this year. So um, they'd really like to pull this one off. I'm sure they've got a lot of eggs in that basket. I'm sure they've been working hard. But man, when it comes to Georgia State, Syracuse, and VMI, they really need to win them 3 games.
George, it is always my lean when I predict games, regardless of the game, to start with I want to take the points. That is usually my first inclination before I'm talking about any game. Like start with taking the points because obviously you're getting points. So if Vegas is off on the game, and I'm not thinking they're off on this one, but if they're off, let's say any game that's around a touchdown game on the point spread, especially this early in the season, Vegas could be off on who's just flat out the better team. So you're
Mm-hmm.
already getting, let's say, 6 or 7 points. So take it. So I'm coming at it from that standpoint. But what typically happens in these kind of games is that a Georgia Tech puts together a nice game plan. They give it all they've got. They stay in the game, but man, football games are long. They're not
Mm-hmm.
basketball games. They're long. And man, look at Duke last year. They had a late third quarter lead and they were knocking on the door to widen the lead. That's when they went for the fourth down. Riley Leonard got hurt. They went for the fourth down. They screwed up, didn't get it. But they had a lead at that point with maybe 3 or 4 minutes left in the third quarter. They lost by 18 points. And that's not unusual when like a top 5 to 10 teams playing like a top 50 team. That it's a good ball game for quite a while, but once once the more talented physical team breaks through, and that's what pulls me back from taking that 11 and a half and running with it because this game could be 17-14 to start the fourth quarter and it's 34-14 final score.
Yeah. Here's the question: how soon does FSU put their backups in for Georgia Tech's first team to all of a sudden get those garbage time points if that's the situation?
That too.
No, I
Yeah.
agree 100%. Like their first team, I don't know about the defense, but the offense may be able to match in the first half if they really have their A game. But as you pointed out, once you get into snaps, 50 and 60 and 70 on the defense and even the offensive linemen get tired just like defensive linemen. Everybody gets tired. And you're playing a Florida State who goes 8, 9, 10 deep on their O line, and they are going to be rotating. Florida State doesn't just send out 5, and if we're lucky, those are the only 5 that play. 8 to 10 guys are going to play every single game, so they're going to be wearing them down. They're not going to want to they're not going to want to rotate their defensive line or O line. And it's the same thing with our defensive lineman. Andy Staples said that we only talked about the top 4 guys. We didn't talk about the other 6. I mean, we got 6 deep at tackle. There's 6 tackles that are comfortable playing. You go Daniel Lyons, Grady Kelly, KJ Sampson. All those guys are going to get snaps. Out of the edge, it's more like 4 guys. Tomiwa Durajaye, Sione Lulohea, Byron Turner, 5, I guess. Those 5 guys at the end. So 10, 11 guys between tackle and defensive end that Florida State can rotate in at a starter at an all ACC type level. That's going to wear on me. I would be shocked if Georgia Tech isn't tired and kind of the hay is in the barn with 10 minutes left in the fourth quarter. But you never know. If this thing gets shortened, that's the one thing I will say. Let me say this, because I've been super confident. The thing that comes along with being a good offense, running offense, and shortening it, like, yeah, they could shorten the game and keep their guys fresh. If they could do that, they could somehow have 2 or 3 different, 8-minute drives in the first half, like really, and cash them in for touchdowns, only give Florida State a couple possessions. Like, if they could somehow stay fresh until that fourth quarter, yeah, it could be anybody's game, but it's going to be really, really tough to do that.
Joey, if you're still out there watching the show, I would be curious to see. Joey sent me a link earlier in the day about the ACC. Let me find it.
It might have been Jake Crane's pick for the ACC finishing order. We went at it pretty good last night on the show. We had a first take kind of episode with Jake Crane from Crane and Company, and yeah, maybe that's why I'm forced. We hollered at each other there for a good 20 minutes, arguing about DJU, and his ACC finishing order is something along the lines of SMU, Clemson, somebody else, and then Florida State. So yeah, he has Clemson and SMU playing in the title game, or maybe Miami. That's the other team. It was SMU, Miami, Clemson, and then Florida State. I'm not sure quite the order. I just know Florida State's fourth, and he had SMU winning it, which is definitely a hot take. We had some fun with it, but we'll see. They lost to all 3 of their Power 5 teams they played last year, so it's just have a hard time seeing them get to that conference level. And one of those 3 teams they lost to is Boston College in a bowl. And I get, Florida State's bowl game, there's difference. But Boston College, like, why wouldn't Boston College be excited to play in a bowl game? Why wouldn't SMU? Like, why would a G5 be let down to play a P5? Like, I don't know if you can even use that context. Although I'm not that deep on these small teams, maybe now after the season, everybody starts their professional career and they don't want to play that last game as a college football player. But I find that hard to believe.
SMU. Well, I got to say, I've been intrigued with SMU. They were on my radar a long time ago in the offseason, and I thought they're kind of interesting. They do have a good team. They do have a good quarterback coming back in Preston Stone. You start to look at, and when I really started to look at them is Lindy's contacted me to give the all ACC team, first, second, and third teams. So if you take that seriously, that's actually a pretty ridiculous project, because you're talking about like 22 times 6 is 66 players. And then you talk about honorable mentions. So I just had to start by going through all ACC from last year and figuring out, first of all, who's coming back and who's not, and then who transferred in, who transferred out. Like, it took me hours and hours and hours and hours to figure this out. But the one thing I came across is SMU had some pretty damn good football players that are coming back from last year, like not just skill position players for sure. And then some pieces on defense, like linebacker was the strong position for them. So I thought, they might do pretty well in the ACC. But yeah, I can't get around 3 Power 5 games last year. They played Oklahoma okay. That was by far the best team they played. But then Oklahoma ran away from them in the fourth quarter by 17. They lost that Boston College game to a team that was 6-6.
Mm-hmm.
That was probably 3-5 in the ACC. So they lose that game.
Coach.
They lost to TCU, who was 5-7.
Fired their coach, right? They didn't have a coach at that point.
Yeah, they didn't have a coach. And so the one thing that I did was, like you were talking about a few minutes ago, with schedules and some of these ACC schedules for some of these weaker teams being so light, I thought, well, maybe if SMU's got one of those light schedules, maybe
They do
sneak them through. So after the first 4 non-conference games, in which they got BYU and TCU, they could be 2-2, they could be 4-0. Who knows? But that doesn't matter. Okay, they do have Florida State and Louisville the first 2 games, so that's not necessarily. They can split the first 2 games against Florida State and going on the road at Louisville. Then they've got a bye, and yeah, then they do have this run of So I was just going, George, Florida State, Louisville are the first two games. Then after a bye, Stanford, Duke, Pitt, BC, Virginia, Cal.
Yeah, if they can get through, if they were able to split those first games,
Yeah.
there's definitely a road there. If but I go back to that Boston College game. Like it's not like those are teams that you have to be a team that blows those teams out. Like you don't sweat them to sweep 7 of them, 6 of them in a row. Like that's just kind of how I feel about it. You see the growing pains like from a team like a UCF when their first year having to play those P5 teams week in, week out. Like I'm with you. I was kind of on the hype train, specific running backs, wide receiver, quarterback. Like, yeah, I could definitely see it. My hang up is just that I can't get over losing to those 3 Power 5 teams last year. And then this year, it's just the week to week grind and kind of what we were talking about with the depth it takes to last in that fourth quarter. I think kind of teams just don't realize it till they hit it. Maybe they do shock the world and they just go out there and do it week to week. But you look at the recruiting rankings and even some of these lesser teams that they play, they still have grown men up there. So we'll see. Who knows? I'd like to pull for them outside of the Florida State team. I'm really not trying to hate. It's just tough your first year in one of these type of conferences, and we'll see.
This is what I didn't know whether you saw. And it's weird because when I go to this link, I can't find it. And Joey just left it again. But when I read the article, so this is no longer on the ESPN college football page, but I've got it right here. The headline says ACC commissioner on Florida State and Clemson lawsuits, quote, "We're going to fight." ACC Commissioner Jim Phillips joined SportsCenter to offer perspective about the lawsuits Florida State and Clemson have filed against the conference. I don't see anything new there. There's just a clip.
Oh, are you talking about the Dennis Dodd report? Is that what you're looking for?
I am looking at an ESPN article that turns out that it's not an article. It's just a minute 42 clip of Jim Phillips on SportsCenter saying we're going to fight to keep Florida State and Clemson.
Okay, I hadn't seen that yet. I will have to look at that, but I did realize and remember since we last talked, Dennis Dodd did come out and I'm bad about this. I know the name. I can look it up. I'll look it up and read it, but he pretty much has confirmed our what we've been reporting pretty much, the conclusions we've came up to talking to Doug Rohan and different things with a little bit of a projection there, a prediction in it, but based off the facts. This will sound familiar to everybody. In February, ESPN will exercise its option not to extend the ACC contract beyond 2027. Florida State, having played the long game, will have its out and able to put itself on the market. FSU will do so at a much reduced rate to get out of the grant of rights since it will only have 3 years to run. Don't ask me where FSU goes, but if it's as a free agent beginning in 2028, there will be Power 4 interest. Basically, the next round of major realignment begins less than a month after the 2025 championship game. Buckle up. So kind of exactly as we've reported. You can't report that it's a fact, but just kind of that's what needs to happen by this time. It's what we expect. And so perfect sense, I guess, that Jim Phillips would go do a press it saying that it's not over. They're going to fight to keep FSU and Clemson because ESPN hasn't said anything about, extending that thing. With FSU and Clemson on the outs, people want to act like they're still worth a certain amount, but there's such a slippery slope. Not only does FSU and Clemson have those, 60 games over 4 million versus whatever, 28 for the entire conference combined, you have to figure that of those 20 something that the rest of the conference have, the majority of them were when they were playing Florida State. And so when that goes away, so does a giant number of the views. Somebody posted an approximation of the ACC views over the past couple seasons. And it's like, I'm not telling anybody to go over it, believe it, but it's pretty close. They had FSU at like 3.5 million, Clemson at close to 2 million. Teams like SMU and Cal coming in really low, like literally like 300,000 average viewerships for a game. So let's do a little math. Say SMU plays Florida State the third week of the season, or it's the fourth week of the season because of a bye. Okay. And that game gets 5 million views, or we'll say 4 million. That's the average, 4 million views. Okay. Well, divide that by 12. You get over what they averaged per game last year. And that's getting added. That's 400,000 views added for all 12 games. So when Cal goes to show, how many views they get per, we average 600,000. Well, 450,000 of that is literally Florida State. And there's teams in the ACC that are down there at like 700,000, 600,000, 500,000. And they all, like, the top 7 or the top 8 teams in viewership in the ACC are the teams that played Florida State last year. And that's how it is. So when Florida State, when Clemson leaves, the vacuum, oh gosh, I mean, it's just that grant of rights is not going on. Their ESPN ain't extending nothing. It will have to be a brand new thing. It will just have to be. There's just no way. But anyways, that's my 2 cents on all that.
So George, this is a great site that I love to go to. And what this is this is the TV ratings week to week. And so this is the 2023 college football season. And so
yes, I love
that's
that.
The SEC championship weekend. All right. So here we are, last weekend of the season. Let's look at some of these matchups. Of course, Florida State get together, and you got over 5 million views for that game on a Saturday night.
With Florida being in the trash can,
We've got, and nobody registered anything that well. Anybody playing at noon's going up against Ohio State and Michigan with 19 million views.
Mm-hmm.
But anyway, because that's what comes to light when I see Louisville, Kentucky, which normally would do a little bit better, but they were on ABC at 1.5 million views. Miami, Boston College, that was actually a Friday game at 1.4 million. That wasn't much of a game. The Kentucky Louisville game was a decent game. And unfortunately, we don't get to see the ACC network on here. The CW.
Look at Wake Forest and Syracuse, 248,000. Now, when both of those teams played Florida State, they got 3-4 million. And what I just said with that math,
yes,
you're adding more to your average in one game against Florida State. You might as well not even have played this game.
Now, to be fair, they're playing on the CW, so nobody's going to get great viewership on the CW. But
right.
You're correct, but that's the thing about judging these TV ratings is we know who's got the best TV ratings. We could all put a blindfold on and we could guess. We could go right down the list of who gets the best TV ratings in the nation. But because they're the biggest brands, they get the best time slots on the best networks too. So that does help considerably. So it kind of goes.
Florida State still does 4 million on the CW.
I'm sorry, what's that?
But Florida State still does 4 million on the CW is the issue.
They do?
Maybe not the same exact they do on ABC, but pretty damn close. And if they're on the CW, it means they're playing University of Alabama or Arkansas. What would be good to look at maybe is a Florida State bye week, where you had, whatever second ACC game ended up being on ESPN or, ABC. That is a good point. But that's kind of the point of all of this. ABC and ESPN doesn't want those other games, those other brands. Like without Florida State and Clemson, they'd be in a problem really quick after a couple weeks into a season when they get, 1.25 million. You're in the engagement game, you're in the YouTube game. You can get a lot of people in the door, but if you're not talking about what they want to hear about or not providing the product, they will haul butt right out the door and go watch Dancing with the Stars.
I know these ads are annoying. This week in the ACC.
There you go. 1.33 million on when they were on the one time they were on that. And that was when Jordan Travis got hurt.
Yep.
So I'm sure a lot of people turned it off after that. But yeah, big difference between 1.3 million and 200,000. And that's, wasn't that 2 ACC teams, or 2 Power 5 teams that were playing?
Yes.
Yeah, see, big difference.
They were playing in a tough spot, though. When Ohio State and Michigan take up 19 million plus
That was a
viewers.
pretty tough spot there as well, though. I mean, that like when Florida State was playing on CW, that was a big weekend in college football. There's a lot going on, but I won't argue it. There's no doubt. Ohio State, Michigan, there's no bigger. That's up there with them.
But yeah, on a Saturday night, who in the world wants to watch? I know that I didn't come anywhere close to turning on Florida State and North Alabama. Let's see, that's at 6:30, and there's got to be, Washington, Oregon State. We're playing at 7:30 on ABC with 4.7 million. Texas, Iowa State played at 8, and Nebraska, Wisconsin, and Florida, Missouri. Those were the primetime games that week.
What a tough week for Florida State that was.
Florida State, Miami, 4.1 million on a 3:30 game on ABC. Yeah, I know from dissecting this because I do a series on it every year, so I almost start to memorize these numbers after a while.
Mhm.
Yeah, Wake Forest and Syracuse, they're playing in front of 600,000, 700,000 on ESPN2. And when Wake and BC and those type teams play Florida State, their games are at 2.6, 2.8 million. So you're talking about, 5 times as many people.
For sure. Curious what this one will do, being week 0. We've already talked offline about what the podcast stuff might look like Saturday night and Sunday morning, but pretty curious what kind of number it'll do.
That's a great
6
question.
or 7 million? Or do you think it could get north of that? Do something crazy just because it's the first game?
Let's see what happened last year.
Did we have a good week 0 game last year?
No, but Notre Dame was playing.
It was Notre Dame Navy, right? Me and Jim were
they
talking
beat them
about that because I
42
told
to
her.
3.
Yeah, I told her how great your show did last year, and she was like, "They got some fan bases." So
almost 3.6 million on NBC at 2:30.
I'll say 7 million. I'll double them up.
You're going to go 7 million on this game? Really?
Yeah, 7 million. Well, it's at noon. That hurts it. I'm just thinking because it's week 0. Like, who's the college football fan that isn't going to watch it?
I hear you.
Like, you know what I mean?
I hear you.
Week 1, I'd say 2 million.
I got you.
Week 0.
Yeah, that's the only game you can watch. Absolutely.
Is there anything going on Saturday night? Will it be up against it, or Saturday, maybe a preseason game it'll be up against?
But like, what did Florida State LSU do with no competition?
9 million? 7, 9?
9.1. Yeah.
They're no LSU. For sure.
I was trying to go back to the previous year. I know you can do every year, and I can't find the place where you can go from year to year on this, but I was interested to see the year before there might have been better games.
Yeah, we played Duquesne in 2022. I'm trying to think if there ever has been a really good week 0 game.
Nebraska and Northwestern played one year. Nebraska and Illinois played another year. Those are the 2 that come to mind for me.
Used to be good teams didn't even play. Now they've got to where they have Power 5 teams playing and stuff. We just got to get it to where we can get some good matchups. If it could have been Miami or Clemson or something else, this would have been really good. But fans and administration would riot if they made us play somebody that hard first week of the season. So, yeah, it makes sense who they scheduled.
Okay, this is the year before, but they put week 0 and week 1 together. So I'll have to figure out where the week 0 game is. So that was the first Florida State LSU game. Who's the week 0? There's that Nebraska Northwestern game, 4.4 million Saturday.
Clemson, Georgia Tech up there. What did that do?
That was Monday night, 4.8.
So 7's not crazy. If Clemson, Georgia Tech did 5 million on a Monday night, I'm sticking with it. You're not backing me off of it. But
all right.
you have I mean, you could say $1 or whatever, one's you, and have the best bet there probably. But yeah, I'm sticking with 7 million.
I'm gonna go 3.7. That's my guess.
Three
Who's
point
showing
seven.
this game? It's on ESPN, right? Noon. Yeah, that's my guess.
3.2. Okay, I'm confident we're going to get you on that. But we'll see.
3.7. I said 3.7.
Oh, 3.7.
3.7.
I'm telling you, it's been a crazy week. I'm taking tomorrow off. I'm going to relax, rest up. But we've been trying real hard to bring the content for everybody between the morning show. Make sure y'all go check that out. Make sure you get Renegade Report. Check out all the different stuff. I've been putting out reels, shorts, running backs, offensive previews. We've had Jake Crane, Jeff Colhane, the voice of the Seminoles, on the past 2 shows. All kind of fun stuff over there. We're trying to get 3,000 subscribers. So if y'all could help us with that, again, it's at the Renegade Report. And yeah, we really, really, really appreciate it. And make sure you get here Saturday for the post-game show after, or it's not Saturday night, I guess it'll be about 3, 4 in the afternoon. After the Georgia Tech Florida State game, it's going to be simulcast, not only here at the FSU Voice of College Football, but the live post-game show will be on the main Voice of College Football channel as well, kind of like what he did with Notre Dame and Navy last year. So just trying to stay focused, have fun, and like I said, tomorrow will be all about rest and relaxation, man. I'm as fired up as you can ever be about a season beginning, and being blessed to do these different things with you, build a platform. I kind of went crazy with it, but we're just getting started, baby.
Nice promo read off the top of your head.
Oh yeah, I got it right there on the back of my eyelids.
Absolutely, folks. Renegade Report all the time. I would ask that you would check out the video that basically is a live stream. So George came on the morning show, as he mentioned off the top, and I thought we had a nice little discussion on DJU in particular, but we went through Georgia Tech, the matchups, and responded to the Pro Football Focus ranking of DJU, number 17 in the country. How do you watch these football games, George? Everybody's got their own little rituals.
Oh man, it's changed over the years. Becoming a creator,
You got a business to
whatever you
run.
want to talk about it, it's changed it a little bit. But generally speaking, the Florida State game is the only one that gets attention on the main TV, locked in. The rest are picture-in-picture on an iPad, or I've got a couple different phones due to call-in lines and needs for the podcast, so I'll have always a secondary game going, sometimes a third. But the Florida State game, you want to know the ritual? We're muting those guys talking unless we're just absolutely dominating and I want to hear what they're saying. But we're muting who's talking. We're listening to Jeff Colhane and his radio call. Either that or one of our friends who's doing a live stream. We're going to do it like that. And we're going to do it with no friends and family. Just George. Just George. We're not going to do it at a bar. We're not going to do it around a bunch of people. George is going to be able to act like a 3-year-old kid and stomp and cry and complain and bitch and moan and jump up and down and do all the things without having to feel bad for acting like that. You're going to go back to just the love of college football, in its finest form. So that's what that is. And we're going to be doing this thing live streamed, probably audio only mostly, but maybe I'll set up a video at some point in time for that over on the channel for members only. But yeah, this is going to be different for me this time. I'm going out of my element to have the audio rolling, but still thinking about how I'm going to do that. Maybe just have the audio on and they just hear what they hear. We'll pretend like the audience isn't there, but we'll have fun with it one way or the other.
And not going to listen to your friends at ESPN.
What's that? Who's that? Friends?
You're not going to listen to your friends at ESPN.
Fired. They've all been fired. What are you talking about? RG3, Sam Ponder. Well, Booger McFarland's left, but not looking good for him.
No, can't speak your mind. Can't do that.
I mean, this has always been conspiracy theory. It's like things that because you work there, about like there being a literal political line, like this is what you have to do. But even like it's on Florida State for a long time. It's like, it's clear that there is a line of talking and there's what they want, a narrative they want pushed. about Florida State, about Clemson, and about the SEC, and about this and that. And if you step out of line, no, sir. I mean, what we saw with Greg McElroy, he was vehement. Florida State needs to get in. He's going to be pissed, all these things. And it looked like, I mean, he got cussed, smacked, everything else. Because on that college football playoff show, he was just sitting there like, yeah, I think they made the right choice. Alabama should be in there. And then you see what happened with Dan Orlovsky. Different thing, but he makes a comment and then has
Oh
to go
yeah.
back. And they make him delete it. No, now I'm this and that. It seems eerily similar. And then you have a RG3 when Paul Feinbaum, everybody's piling on Florida State. He comes out and how dare you? You know, they're this and they're that. You know, people tried to make it about politics, and I won't even mention what the politics are in the situation because that's not what we do. But RG3 and Sam Ponder were on the exact opposite ends of that particular political issue. Sam Ponder was vocal on one side, and Robert Griffin III was vocal on the other. So it wasn't that, was it? Can't be. So, yeah, you either toe the company line, or you're out. And even he alluded to as such in his tweets and things. You know, he's not gonna sell his soul or sell out for anybody. So apparently they're asking people to do that. I mean, he was their groomed guy. I wasn't a fan. A lot of Florida State's fans weren't a big fan of him when he first started because as soon as he got there, they threw him on Florida State games like, screw it, you can learn there. And it was pretty rough. You know, he was making some pretty off-color jokes. I thought it was kind of corny, but boy, did he ever get it together and like really improve.
Yeah.
Like to where everybody had to eat it. Like, oh, this guy's good now. And this past year, 2023, we were hoping for RG3 to call the games.
Yeah.
Because he was the best one, and he was going to hype up FSU, do what he's supposed to do as the home team and show off the elements. Anytime you have anybody else, they're talking about Alabama or, Georgia or LSU or whoever the case may be, literally jumping up and down, doing cartwheels over a game, that Alabama-Auburn game. I'll never get over that. It's like, and then out of this, as soon as that's over, boy, FSU, they suck. I'll tell you what, they can only beat Florida by 10. Yeah, no love lost there, Mark.
Well, when you go through that and you talk about the company line, it takes me back to a luncheon one time. And this is a long, long time ago. And baseball fans, if you remember who Kurt Schilling is, he was a great, great pitcher for the Boston Red Sox, but he was the main guy on the baseball broadcast for ESPN back when they cared about baseball. And right after he got banished for whatever he was talking about, I'm not going to defend it. I have no idea. It has nothing to do with what he had to say. It had everything to do with the right to say on your personal platform. And I was in a luncheon, and I don't mean like 300 people. I mean like 12 people, because they did something at ESPN that I actually thought was a really good thing. They would basically randomly select employees to have lunch with the head of the company. And so you would sit there and they only selected like 10 people. So boom, my name came up, boom. And so you sit and you chat and you have a nice little lunch. And then you get to ask questions. And so my first question was, what's the policy on people being able to exercise their freedom of speech? Asked this to John Skipper, who was the Jimmy Pitaro at the time. And this is about the stupidest thing you could say. And it was repeated over and over and over in all sorts of company meetings. We respect everybody's right to speak their mind and their freedom of speech as long as it lines up with the company values. What's that? That means you don't give them the right for freedom of speech.
You took the words out of my mouth, because it's like you can be as far one way or the other, as controversial or one way or the other, as long as there's been a first take segment about it. If not, you're in trouble. Like, as long as you're with theirs, you can discuss it. But I forget who it is. Somebody got Sage Steele or whoever she got fired for something she did completely off. Nothing to do with ESPN. And yet they have people that are pretty active talking about stuff, on both sides of the aisle. But it just, anyways.
Yeah. What she got let go for, it to me is insane. All right, folks. Appreciate you being here at the Voice of College Football. We get together every Wednesday at 6 p.m. Eastern Time. Renegade Report. Get there now. And post game right here at the Voice of College Football with George right after the double zeros on the clock. So check out George and talk some football for the first time when you're going to be able to actually talk about a football game that you watched. So do that.
Ready. So ready.
All right, man. Well, we appreciate it, and take care of that voice and
Yes,
get ready
sir.
for Saturday, and appreciate you doing what you do here at the Voice of College Football, sir.
I might have been hollering at that software earlier. Maybe that's what it is. I just forgot about it. I'll be all right.
All right, man. We'll see you soon. Thanks, man.
Go Knowles, baby.